Hello and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. My name is Omar Pinto, the host of the Share Podcast and a founding member of the SRC, the Share Recovery Community. In the SRC, we have a number of live online recovery meetings every week on a number of different topics. This podcast is only one example of the content provided to our members. In this meeting, a chapter of the Tao Te Ching is discussed every week as to how it relates to recovery. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast episode.
Hey everyone, Buddy C. This is the January 24th, 2019 Tao Te Ching meeting for Share Recovery Community. Got a good crowd this morning. Got Marla and Kate and Tori and Melissa, Craig and Lala. Glad to have all you guys. Kate and I were talking for a minute before, and I don't want to take Kate's inventory, but she says she had a hard time making a clue of this one. Right, Kate?
I did. I thought it was confusing.
It is. It is confusing, but once I really spent some time on the Wayne Dyer commentary, and it was really, really good and opened some doors for me. There was one thing before we start reading. Kate, are you going to be able to read for us today?
Yep.
Okay. There's one thing. I found something here that I did not find anywhere else in the Tao readings. And I put the link to the readings in the chat, so if you want to pull that up on your computer, you can and keep it. It says in this first chapter, stanza, the Tao will never leave you if you do. It's like a Tao promise, you know. It says that it will never leave you if we make ourselves a valley, if we become a stream, if we become the valley, that the Tao will never leave us. I'm like, wow, that's a huge promise. And I looked through the rest of this and searched it, and no other chapter says this. This is the only chapter that makes this promise. And a promise that if we do something, the Tao will never leave us is a huge promise. So I thought that was really good. Anyone have anything before we start? If not, I'll get Kate just to read for us. Okay, Kate, you want to start there?
I will start. Okay, the first translation. Know the strength of man, but keep a woman's care. Be the stream of the universe. Being the stream of the universe, ever true and unswerving, become as a little child once more. Know the white, but keep the black. Be an example to the world. Being an example to the world, ever true and unwavering, return to the infinite. Know honor, yet keep humility. Be the valley of the universe. Being the valley of the universe, ever true and resourceful, return to the state of the uncarved block. When the block is carved, it becomes useful. When the sage uses it, he becomes the ruler. Thus, a great tailor cuts little. Okay, the second translation. Know the male, yet keep to the female. Receive the world in your arms. If you receive the world, the Tao will never leave you, and you will be like a little child. Know the white, yet keep to the black. Be a pattern for the world. If you are a pattern for the world, the Tao will be strong inside you, and there will be nothing you can't do. Know the personal, yet keep to the impersonal. Accept the world as it is. If you accept the world, the Tao will be luminous inside you, and you will return to your primal self. The world is formed from the void, like utensils from a block of wood. The master knows the utensils, yet keeps to the block. Thus she can use all things. Okay, the third translation. Know the masculine, but keep to the feminine, and become a watershed to the world. If you embrace the world, the Tao will never leave you, and you become as a little child. Know the white, yet keep to the black. Be a model for the world. If you are a model for the world, the Tao inside you will strengthen, and you will return whole to your eternal beginning. Know the honorable, but do not shun the disgraced, embracing the world as it is. If you embrace the world with compassion, then your virtue will return you to the uncarved block. The block of wood is carved into utensils by carving void into the wood. The master uses the utensils, yet prefers to keep to the block because of its limitless possibilities. Great works do not involve discarding substance. The final translation: if you are strong but remain sensitive, power will flow through you. With that power, you'll always be right with Tao. It's like a whole new life. If you are idealistic but stay rooted in reality, you're an example to others. Set that example, and you'll always be right with Tao. There is no limit to what you can do. If you are honorable but remain humble, you will see things as they are. If you see things as they are, you'll always be right with Tao. Your life will become simple, yet full of potential. Let Tao show you how to get right with Tao, so your slightest gesture can change the world.
There's quite a bit in that, isn't there?
Let Tao show you how to get right with Tao. So what do you do?
Yeah, there's quite a few opposites in it as well. So if you look at things like man, woman, be, being, know, and keep, and honour and humility, it's kind of opposites of each other. So if we look at things like yin and yang, with one there's usually another one involved as well. So I think that's what it's talking about, saying know the man, know the woman. So just basically know both perspectives of what's going on. One of the translations was talking about be the valley of the universe. Could that be a conduit? Be a conduit from goodness to other people. There was also reference to a block, the uncarved block, which is commonly known as a poo, which is uncarved block, and it's more useful sometimes when it's uncarved because it can be carved into anything. So I think that's why it's talking about using the utensils, but the sage prefers to have the block because the block's more useful because he can turn it into anything that anything that he needs, or anything that he can use as a vessel to pass on what he has. I got a bit confused when it was saying become a watershed for the world. A watershed normally means a cut-off point, doesn't it? Or at least it does over here. We have a watershed for advertising, so there's no alcohol or no adult contented adverts before 9 o'clock. I read that into a watershed, so that confused me a little bit. But if it's what I think it is, I think it's to do with being a limit, setting a limit, but not having boundaries, so you're still approachable to everything. But
I thought of a watershed as where the water was collected. Here, that's what we would think of as a watershed.
Right.
Like we have lakes that are watersheds where they're man-made, but they're to collect the water so that all the runoff doesn't. I was thinking a lot about the valley, and that this talks about, and when we get into the Wayne Dyer, it actually, that first phrase says, know the strength of man, but keep a woman's care, be a valley under heaven. If you do, the constant virtue will not fade away. One will become like a child again. So basically it's saying be a valley. So let's just think about a valley for a minute. How is a valley formed?
Gravity and erosion and is that what force? Yeah, force like gravity and erosion. And
this is from National Geographic on valleys. Valleys are depressed areas of land scoured and washed out by the conspiring forces of gravity, water, and ice. It is an effort. It is not fun for the valley to be made into a valley. Oh, hold on. I'll unmute you, Lala. You got something, dear?
Oh, sorry. And yeah, that was me that needed to be muted. I was going to say, does that kind of come back to the concept of the emptiness?
Yes, definitely. Surrender.
Yeah.
Back to our, in recovery, if we practice any kind of step program, our surrender portion, our first 3 steps. I mean, and you know, the valley becomes a valley. It's not effort on the part of the valley, but if we want to be that kind of a watershed, that place of gathering, then we have to let those things happen. They said, let Tao be Tao, let it be, let it, you know, surrender, all of this powerlessness, you know. And if we become this valley, and think about a valley too, I was thinking about, you know, people talk about mountaintop experiences and all this, but there's no sustenance on the mountaintop. Everything's in the valley. Food, water. You might go to the mountain, but you get everything you need from the valley itself. So I think what this is saying is, are we willing to become the valley for the people around us and for the world?
Yeah, that makes sense.
World, you know?
That makes sense, because it goes back to keeping to your roots and keeping your feet firmly planted rather than getting lofty and above your station.
And it says that if you embrace the world, if you, like the third one, know the masculine but keep the feminine, the water, and become a watershed to the world, if you embrace the world, the Tao will never leave you. And you will become as a little child. Like, okay, like a byproduct, like a fruit of this is you'll be as a little child. So then I started thinking about that. I was like, okay, as a little child, maybe as dependent. Think about a child, the child's list of responsibilities. If you have a 3-year-old, what is your 3-year-old's list of responsibilities?
nothing.
It's the same as my wife's 40-year-old. Absolutely not at all.
Share what you have, right? And do what I tell you to do is pretty much it. And there's grace there for both of those things, right? Because they're 3 years old. You know,
the child thing, I took it to mean in a sense, in that first place of love, because that's all children know.
Yeah.
Not judging as well, because they don't know any better.
I was thinking of dependency was what I was thinking.
Right.
I mean, you don't walk into your 4-year-old and say, hey, listen, we don't have money for the mortgage this month, so you're going to have to go out and get a job, or we're not going to have, you know. I mean, you don't do that to, do you? Okay. So, you know, and that's the kind of dependency I think that we can live in, that kind of childlike dependency. And it comes from being the valley. It comes from surrender. It comes from, you know, and something I like too was in the 28th on down, it says, the block of wood is carved into utensils by carving void into the wood. More of that carving, that removing, that valley creating experience, you know. And the valley is the lowest part. So that's why it can give back to everything else, and it talks about water and the greatest body of water being the ocean, because it's the lowest part of it's the lowest body of water. So it's the most humble, and it continually gives back to the rest. So there's an aspect of that, I think, in this valley, that we're able, will we be the source that's needed for those around us, or are we going to demand from them and make them the source? But if we're willing to do this and be the source and humble ourselves, then it says the Tao will never leave us. That's what I was seeing in it. Does that make a little more sense, Kate? Yeah,
I'm starting to get something out of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Because I think it's about, once we learn that we can, if we will be that, be in that humble place for those around it, because in every interaction, I'm either demanding or I'm giving. In every interaction, am I being the valley, or am I, or am I seeking the valley? Am I seeking the sustenance from the valley, or am I being that? Am I giving love, or am I trying to get love?
Mm-hmm.
So,
like that.
Yeah, that's for me. That's what I'm seeing, and these are just different aspects of that. And Wayne Dyer really talks about this in depth. If you guys would, I'd like to go ahead and talk about him. All right, the 28th verse in Wayne Dyer's: know the strength of man, but keep a woman's care. Be a valley under heaven. If you do, the constant virtue will not fade away. One will become like a child again. Think about the amount of care you had as a child, the amount of worry, the amount of stress. What if you could live in a way now that you trusted everything would be okay, like a child? Does that speak to anybody? That does me. Know the white and keep to the black, and be the pattern of the world. To be the pattern of the world is to live constantly in the path of virtue, without erring a single step, and to return again to the infinite. One who understands splendor while holding to humility acts in accord with eternal power. To be the fountain of the world is to live the abundant life of virtue. When the unformed is formed into objects, its original qualities are lost. If you preserve your original qualities, you can govern anything. Truly, the best governor governs least. Living virtuously. In this verse, the word virtue is synonymous with nature or the Tao. By being one with nature, the sage is in concert with the Tao and is a virtuous person in daily life. Here, Lao Tzu speaks about your personal path and also a Tao-oriented way of governing others. These others could be your family members, fellow employees, business associates, friends, and even the entire process of government if you're in a political position. In fact, much of the Tao Te Ching is focused on teaching all of us how to create an administration that is in accord with these highest principles of the Tao. It is my most fervent intention to spread these teachings throughout the world in such a way as to facilitate a transformation of all those who call themselves leaders and are destined for or presently in positions of power. Every person has the inherent capacity to spark massive changes that can lead to the tranquility, harmony, and peace that are our heritage. Lao Tzu calls this preserving our original qualities. Such qualities require the least amount of government, so it seems natural to see that we rule best by allowing our Tao nature, which rules the least, to flourish. Okay, here we go. Living virtuously is what you do when you're permitting the Tao to guide you. The advice Lao Tzu gives for doing this is contained in 4 distinct images in this verse. So what he does is he divides this verse into 4 different segments. And this is the first segment that we were talking about earlier. Be a valley under heaven is number 1. Let the river of life flow through you. As a valley beneath heaven, you're a fertile place of grace where everything is received and allowed. You might see it as the lowest area in the spectrum of the 10,000 things, or as the point where you can see all things flowing above you. In this place of humility, the constant virtue of the Tao will never fade away. For me, this means living with radical humility. So he suggests get down, if you can, eye level of a small child, looking up, see if original qualities are more visible. Be like the valley under heaven, ready to embrace and tend the seeds that blow your way. Everything grows in the valley, right? But to be the valley, it has to be the humblest. So it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? You've got to, if you want to be that source, it takes surrender, takes sacrifice to be that source. So the first one's humility. Any comments on that? Okay, we'll move to the second. Be the pattern of the world is the second image that invites you to live virtuously. See nature unspoiled by culture as in the perfection of the uncarved block of wood. The pattern of the world untouched by humans is a design of the Tao. So rather than insisting on changing or resisting, you're encouraged to row your boat and your life gently down the stream. Trust the perfection of the Tao. Oh, here he's still on that. To take you merrily back to your perfect place of origination. Y'all sing that in Scotland, Craig, as a kid? Row your boat? Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds similar to how you sing it.
Okay. Well, I doubt similar to how I sing it. Lao Tzu, I can't carry a tune in a bucket. Lao Tzu is basically saying to let go and let the Tao. Dismiss ego where you've created and allow yourself to be in the world by changing how you look at the world. So the first one's humility. The second one's letting go. Now let's see what the third one is. Act in accord with the eternal power is the third image of living virtuously. Just contemplate for a moment the idea of a fountain of the world, which never fades, never ends, and is there beyond the comings and goings of the 10,000 things. This kind of power is the one to create and then retreat, to form and then to render formless. It is always there, an endless geyser gushing forth the abundant life of virtue. You're in accord with eternal power when you suspend your ego and become conscious of the Tao flowing in this fountain of you. Picture yourself pouring forth not from your ideas of self-importance and your need for external power of others, but from a ceaseless source of power and virtue that's in harmony with infinite nature. That's his takeaway there.
Picture yourself pouring forth, not from your ideas.
Nature.
Sounds good.
Yeah. But what he's saying is, for me, what I see is that, it's back to that emptiness again. It's not about what we can add to. Our knowledge is not our good is not dictated by how much we learn. It's dictated by how much we learn to surrender. It's about surrender. It's not about knowledge. It's about that emptiness that we were talking about, that we always seem to talk about.
Yeah.
We're never going to get away from that because it is always about making room. And I think that's what surrender is for, is to make room. so that we can find that power that's within all of us and make room for it. Because if we're full of ourselves, there's no room for our higher power, that source of good and virtue that's within all of us to act at all if we're full of ourselves. So change the image of yourself to being who's in accord with the eternal power, and the virtuous life you want to see will be visible. So let's say we're full of ourselves. What's some action we can take to try to be empty? What's some empty action?
Do some service
Exactly.
work.
It's one of those things for me where you've heard of acting your way into right thinking rather than thinking your way into right acting.
Yeah.
You know, for me, the action I have to take is, like Marla said, some kind of service, some kind of getting out of myself. That always is the answer for me. Always, always, always. It's never about making a better buddy. It's about less of buddy. Always, you know. Because as long as it's just me, then the only answer I have is my solutions.
Right.
We have access to so much more. That's my hang up with just the cognitive behavior approach to recovery. There are some tools there that are helpful, especially in the interim till we learn how to surrender. But for me, none of that self-help worked until I learned to surrender. So that's what this is talking about for me, is letting go. Any comments? Oh, this is good. Yeah. Let me go back to, now we're on 4. I've got a couple of comments here I'd wrote about. 3, it seems that his that we just read, the action is natural action of love toward others is what I got from that. Acting in accord with eternal power. Natural actions of love toward others. And I thought about I made a couple of notes about a valley. It's where life is lived. Life's lived in the valley. That's where you get your food, your water. That's where the seed settles and creates growth. But it's the result of the forces of gravity, water, and ice. It is a forced action to create the valley. And all that has to happen first. You know, a lot of times we see the valley and say, oh, this is beautiful, but we don't see what millions of years took to create that valley. And all the floods that came through and rearranged the settlement in the valley, you know, and all those things that have happened over time, you know, that have created that valley that we now see as this beautiful thing. So, you know, we talk about the effortless effort. I think that's the effort, is to allow and let ourselves be changed. Yeah. The stuff we don't like.
Right.
The stuff we don't like. Okay, the 4th one. Let me share again. Y'all chime in anytime. I know this is a little heavy. Preserve your original qualities. In the 4th image of living virtuously, and one that I happen to love, he likes this one. Your original qualities are those that were you before there was a you. Okay? This is what Jesus meant by, and now, Father, glorify me in your presence with the glory I had with you before the world began. Imagine if you can, what is meant by before the world began. Original qualities Lao Tzu speaks of are the love, kindness, and beauty that defined your essence before you were formed into a particle and then a human being. In other words, living virtuously has nothing to do with obeying the laws, being a good citizen, or fulfilling some externally inspired idea of who you were meant to be. In other words, your nature. This insightful verse of the Tao Te Ching tells you how to live virtuously. And this is it right here. Be a valley under heaven by being humble and allowing seeming opposites to flow through you. Be the pattern of the world by seeing the pattern of your world and living in harmony without imposing ego on others. Wow. In accord with the eternal power, be a fountain of the planet that by consciously pouring forth from the endless ocean of goodness and virtue, that's your birthright. Preserve your original qualities by reclaiming and reacquainting yourself with the Tao's essence, which preceded your birth into form and is your original quality. Wow. That's it right there. That's it. Entertain the exact opposite of what you've been conditioned to believe. Instead of striving to see yourself as superior to others, perhaps choose the self-image of a valley. From this grounded, fertile, and receptive position, be willing to hear and receive. Listen intently when you're inclined to offer advice. Wow, that speaks to me. Be a humble earth source rather than a lofty, ego-inspired person. In the last line of the 28th verse, Lao Tzu is clear on this. Truly, the best governor governs least. This isn't advice to lower your opinion of yourself, but rather to see yourself as so strongly connected to your source of being that you know and trust that you're a piece of it. Replace negativity with love. All negativity with love. Khalil Gibran, the spiritual Lebanese poet, once advised that if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy. Actively begin the process of preserving your original qualities by being an instrument of the Spirit, particularly in places where you find it easy to forget your own true virtuous self. And his do the Tao is be childlike today. So let me stop the share. Okay, guys, any thoughts? Any thoughts on this?
I like the part where it says entertain the exact opposite of what you've been conditioned to believe, because I feel like that's something that I try to do every day. Is like get rid of all my old habits and my old way of thinking, but picking up new beliefs about not only myself, but the way that my life can be and is right now. So I like that principle there.
I've picked up Eckhart Tolle's new book, A New Earth, and he's gone on quite a bit about the ego and how the dysfunction of the ego was already recognised 2,500 years ago. And he gives quite a lot of credit to like Buddha and Lao Tzu. And he's talking about the urgency. One of the parts is called the urgency of transformation, and how he's recommending that we change our ways of the ego, because it's basically destroying the planet, and a natural way of, or a natural process of thinking, a natural process of being, rather than just being. There's people that are asserting their will and their pressure on everybody else. So that fits in quite nicely with the part where it's saying that the greatest leaders don't try, or the greatest governors don't push. I can't remember the exact words that was used on it, but he dedicates quite a bit of time to that sort of thing. And it's talking about the human consciousness, how it didn't just happen overnight. It was something that's been developed over such a long time. But again, there's quite a lot of people trying to influence what goes on externally. So if anyone's not picked that book up, then it's definitely a good read. It does go on a lot about resentments and grievances as well, which is again a lot about letting go. So it's definitely been a good help for myself, and I think it fits in quite nicely with this chapter as well.
I wish surrender was not such a big part of this. Who the fuck wants to surrender? I don't.
And who doesn't want to control our circumstances? I want to control everything, of course.
Exactly, Marla. Yeah, that's me. I always controlled. I knew the best way to do everything.
Everything.
If I didn't have the best way to do it, it wasn't the best way. I mean, that, So.
No men like you. Yeah.
Yeah, so. But that was huge for me to learn that maybe I don't have the best idea. Maybe
that's a big idea.
yeah. Because we always judge others by their actions, and we judge ourselves by our intentions. So I could change my. So I intended to do whatever, and so. But my ego would always find a way to still be superior. And that's not being the valley. That is not being the valley. So if I'm not being the valley, the Tao is not being with me in all my actions and everything that's going on. It's funny, it's interesting that we've got 4 concepts here to help us according to the way that Wayne Dyer broke it down. Humility. I can see that in the valley, being humble. And our reward for that, and I think part of that, I think one way we can see that we're being the valley may be that we're learning to live a surrendered, dependent life. If we see more dependency in our life on our higher power than what we did before, that's a sign that we're starting to surrender. Because one of the promises of living a humble, surrendered life is that, of being the valley. Second, letting go. Third, our natural actions of love toward others. And fourth, living that love nature, that original nature. So Marla hit the nail on the head when we said, what do we do? How do we start moving in that direction? I think the way that we do that is by making an intention to love others. Because I cannot love me and love you at the same time.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I can't do both.
No.
I can't do both at the same time. Either I'm looking out for you or I'm looking out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do both. Not in a bad way. Like I'm looking out for. It's not like my ego. I'm feeding my ego and having a true love and concern for you, both together. That's not it. I don't see how that can happen. So I think that's where it starts. I think that's one of those actions that we can act our way into right thinking.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And start there and start in the moment we're in. Because for me, this is a lot about learning to live in this moment. I never lived in the moment. Never, ever, ever was I in this moment. I was always in yesterday or planning for tomorrow. I was never where my feet were. Never. That's good. Any more comments? Any epiphanies? The takeaway for me on this is to be the valley.
Humility.
Valley.
I taking out of this humility as well, and allowing the Tao to live through you, to be. We just live through me, live through us, if that's possible. I still have no understanding what the Tao is, but it'd be nice to live in love all the time.
Marla, I think that's the only place we can start, because we're not able to see the Tao. I mean, this is God, this spirit of the universe. I mean, it's so far above and beyond, but we just see glimpses. And I think the greatest glimpse we can see is love. And I think that's the greatest glimpse we can see. And if we keep our head down and learn to love, then that will bring us toward that rooting out it takes to be the valley. Because it is a sacrifice for me to love instead of pursue my own interest. Mm-hmm. That is a sacrifice. And that's that gouging out of the valley, Mm-hmm. That's making us that valley. Block of wood, uncarved block of wood's talking about our potential. God, we got such potential when we're able to start loving and being compassionate, We can just be that childlike, have that childlike dependent attitude, can really take us to places that we could never go before, Give us that peace and joy that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys? Everyone good?
Yeah.
Now, I want to tell y'all, Lala and Melissa and Tori, if y'all come another week, you're going to be committed. And we're going to have to find something for you to do. We're going to start missing y'all if y'all are not here, okay? It usually takes 3 weeks. People come for a couple of weeks, and then they leave for whatever reason. So I'm just telling you, if you make it one more week, we're going to miss you if you're not here, okay?
I plan to keep coming back.
All right, good. Hope y'all are getting something out of it. It can be a heavy, So
I'll definitely be here between this and letting go. One or the other, if not both.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, guys, if we have nothing else, we'll call it there. Everyone good?
Just before you go, I get quite a lot out of these from listening to it back. There is quite a lot in the actual meetings themselves that you kind of don't take in. So if you get the opportunity, download the podcast or review the video feed of the meeting, and you get quite a lot more out of it. I'm usually download this after, and I go back to work and I'm driving along and thinking, do you know what, that was quite a good point that I didn't actually really pick up. And so if you do get the opportunity, then it's a brilliant resource just to download and just listen again.
I could never listen to myself on a podcast because I've been on several different ones, and I just never could listen to my voice. And but when you told me that, Craig, early on, I started listening to this, and now I listen to it every week, and I always get more out of it when I listen back to it again. So because we're always thinking while this is going on, and we don't let it, we're not emptying it a lot of times enough to hear it, and there's more to hear. There's definitely more to hear. So great. Thanks, Craig. Well, guys, y'all have a great week then.
Yep. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Same.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. For more information about the SRC, go to thesharepodcast.com. Share is spelled SHAIR, and look for the Share Recovery Community link. When you join the SRC, you will be able to participate in this meeting and many more live, plus access to a video library of past meetings and many more benefits for being a part of this growing community. Thanks again for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with your friends in recovery.